Come make a Santa's beard cookie with me. Come in with your edible pen or your scribe, and we're going to draw out a Santa's beard shape. There is no template for this because we want the kind of whimsical nature that comes with a beard. Beards do not look perfect. They're not perfectly styled. After we have the beard, we want to go a little bit below it and just draw two parallel lines. This is going to be a belt in the future, just to give you some context to what this cookie is going to look like. Then we're going to come in with our red royal icing and we're going to outline below the belt. So we have the beard, we have the belt, and then we have below the belt. We're going to outline that in red, and then we're just going to come in with the red icing and fill in that outline. You can go over your outline a few times. I just went through it once, but if you feel like your icing is a little runnier, you can outline it, give it a moment, and then come in to fill it in. My icing evened out really nicely with this red icing, so I didn't have to worry about that too much. Then we're going to go above the belt, that other parallel line, and we're going to outline from the beard to that belt line. So it's easiest, the outline of the cookie, the outside of the cookie, the belt line are really easy. And then you'll want to take your time when it comes to the beard because we have those little spiral sections. And so it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, a doable challenge. You can do it, but a little bit more of a challenge. One major tip whenever it comes to outlining is to let the icing flow from your piping bag and not to have your piping bag tip directly against the cookie. Now, I like to end touching the cookie or begin touching the cookie, but then I lift up a little bit, probably no more than a centimeter, and let the icing fall down. And this can be really helpful on these kind of circular shapes where you can manipulate your icing to move a little bit more how you want it to. And then once you have the outline, you're going to fill in, and you want to be careful to not overfill these kind of twirly areas around the beard because your icing can spread a little bit more, and we want to try to avoid that. So we're just barely getting icing into those areas, and if we need to add more a little bit later on after we filled in the entire section, then we can, but we don't need to start that way. But I do want to make sure I'm getting an even layer across all of these sections. You can see it's pretty even across, and it'll start settling as well. And I'm just going to barely fill in this little twirly-do here. And if your icing isn't settling very nicely, I didn't have to come in with the scribe. It settled on its own. That's not always the case. So if you need to come in and even it out with the scribe, definitely do that. And you can use your scribe to get your icing exactly where you want it to be. Once you have outlined and filled in the red areas of your Santa, you're going to come in with the black and do the belt section. Now, your red areas are probably still going to be fairly wet, and that is completely okay. We don't need to wait for them to crust over or anything. If they have crusted over, that's also okay. Your Santas will just have a little bit more dimension, but it doesn't matter whether it's more wet on wet or whether it's more defined. So you're going to outline your section because I always like to outline any section that I'm filling in so that my lines can stay consistent. And then I'm just going to fill in that outline with the black, making sure that it's as even as possible. And then we'll move on to the white. Now, if your black is not super even, make sure to come in with your scribe so you can even it out. And then moving on to the white, this was probably the biggest challenge to outlining because we already have a little bit of that edge with the red, so you can use your outline line to overlap that just a little smidge. And you might just need to pressure pipe some of these areas. I know it goes against so many things that I say, but some of these tight areas, it might be easier instead of just outlining them to pressure pipe them a little bit at the end. And pressure piping is when you're just forcing a little bit more icing out of your piping bag to just fill in a section. It is often what you're doing when you're filling in an outline without even thinking about it. But when you're calling it specifically pressure piping, it's usually because you're going in with some intention of making a design or a shape without having that outline in place. But like I said, I like having the outline because it helps keep the shapes that you originally drew onto your cookie just a little bit more sturdy. I have found, specifically using a hybrid icing, that if you don't outline your shapes, they can get a little wobbly. As opposed to if you used a line and then a flood icing. The flood is so thin that it won't affect your line at all, but your hybrid icing is a little thicker, so it can affect your line. But once you've outlined your beard, you're going to come in and just flood the section. And once again, if you need to even anything out, you want to come in with your scribe and do so. And you can also use your scribe to make your beard a little pointier, anything along those lines. This is when you want to make sure you let your Santa crust over, become a little bit more matte. You can see it's not nearly as shiny as the black that I'm piping on. And we're going to pipe on a rectangle on the beard. I was going to say a rectangle in the shape of a rectangle, but on the beard. And this is a prime example of pressure piping. I did one initial just normal line in black to give me my frame of reference, and then I'm just putting a little bit more pressure on my piping bag so I can just have a thicker line instead of going over this multiple times. And then I'm going to come in with my white and just add a few line details onto Santa's beard to just give him a little bit more dimension. I'm putting this white line just following the shape of his beard, and I'm doing 3. You can do more than that if you feel so inclined. But this is a fairly minimalist cookie, so keeping it pretty even with the shape of the beard should look great. And that leaves you with your Santa cookie. This is completely optional, but you can come in with some luster dust. This will add a gold, silver, or copper sheen. I'm using gold here, and I'm going to mix it with some vodka until it runs really smooth. I have some vodka in that other cup right there. I don't have a great way of mixing it into the luster dust without kind of over diluting it. But once it is smooth, I can paint it onto any of the details on my cookie, and it can leave this gold sheen behind. It works best when you have white icing that you're painting. So if you wanted to do this on any of the pieces of your cookie, just make sure that you have white icing down. Otherwise, it'll take a few layers to cover something that's like black or brown or navy. Download the full free guide to decorate your own North Pole cookie set.